Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rat and the Raccoon podcast with Nukes and Wheezy, the show hosted by two lads with a love for video games. Today, we're going to be talking about our favorite box art. Nukes, I don't know about you, but I am super excited to chat with you about this one today.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited, and we've had us a little break, so it feels kind of like the first day of school.
It sure does. Feeling refreshed and ready to get back at it. Although I don't know if I ever really felt in any way, shape, or form refreshed during my days in the education system. But that's a conversation for a different time. Yeah, let's dive right into it. We've both picked three cover arts that would be considered our favorites. The cover arts that I've selected come from different eras of video games. None of them really would be like my all-time favorite video games as such. This is definitely leaning more towards the art side of things, and what made me click from that kind of aesthetic perspective, if that makes sense. How about you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I picked some that are, well, two of them are kind of modern. One of them gotta remind myself is like over 20 years old, so I guess it's kind of retro now. But
It's insane. I feel like over the last 5 years that you just mentioned games being cited as being 20 years old now. And I'm like, what? I always have to take a step back and go, really, has that much time passed? But that's life. That's it. But I've just noticed that there's so many classics from my childhood and, my teenage years that are now falling into the retro category, which is crazy to say. But yeah, I'm going to start off with my first one, and my first one comes from a little game called Alleyway. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Alleyway, Nukes, or to the folks listening. This was actually a title launch for the Nintendo Game Boy in 1989. It's essentially a clone of 1976's Breakout. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Breakout, or if the name's not ringing any bells as such, I feel that a description of the gameplay is going to give you kind of one of those, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about kind of moments. So it's set from a vertical perspective in a rectangular box. And at the top of the box is a bunch of bricks, and at the bottom is your paddle. Now, moving your paddle left or right, your objective is to direct a ball into the bricks until they are all destroyed. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So hopefully that's given everybody that kind of light bulb moment to go, oh, I know the type of game that you're
hmm
talking about. So the artwork, essentially, as you can see naturally enough, is an artist's interpretation of the depiction of that gameplay in action. So for those of you who might be listening on Spotify or Apple, I'll give you a kind of breakdown of how it looks. It's a spacey, galaxy looking background with silver bricks, with the ball being bounced back to the paddle or the ship, as it's depicted here, that you're controlling. Um, and it just looks really colorful and cool. Definitely give it a Google if you're only listening to audio right now. I absolutely love it. And I love it for a number of different reasons. Firstly, it allowed more of a connection between my child imagination and the gameplay that was happening. For example, in the cover art, you could see inside the ship and all of the different controls and levers and buttons. As a kid, you want to see all that cool space stuff, right? Star Wars was something I loved growing up, and anything to do sci-fi and fancy looking buttons of different colors and sorts. Just loved that stuff growing up. And also, you can see that there's a person directing the ship too using those controls, which I'll come back to in a moment. So it gives you more of a sense of the universe, which sounds a little bit silly to say with such a kind of basic game, but it really does give you more of a sense of immersion within that universe, right? Um, the gameplay, the depiction obviously isn't as sophisticated as the artwork, and with certain aspects, it aims to fill the gaps left by the limitations of what was actually like depicted in the game. And that was a strong tactic in my mind to be used at the time, because as gamers we needed to use our imaginations to immerse ourselves, as I said, like in the universe of the game. So yeah, I love this, and it's always going to remind me of my childhood, and of my parents like actually showing me how to use the Game Boy. I think this might have been actually one of those first games that I'd ever played. My memory is very, very like hazy with like my first gaming experience, but I feel like this is potentially one of those first ones that I played. There's a second kind of reason, bonus reason, if you will, as to why I love I love this. And it's only since we started doing the research for this podcast, or preparation, I should say, for this podcast. Um, the person depicted in the spaceship was not stated to be Mario on the cover or in the manual for the original release of Alleyway, even though the character model is exactly that of Mario. In the depiction here, it looks very similar, and in the game, it's the same. I believe it's the same model that's used in the likes of Super Mario Land. But it wasn't until 1990 that in the European version they stated that it was the man himself. Now, the trivia that I have is not that, but it's, I think, and I am totally open to being corrected here on this one, but I believe that this technically marks Mario's first appearance in space. So that's my first one, Nukes. I don't know if you'd like to share any thoughts on that.
I actually have never heard of Alleyway, but I have played those brick breaking games before, it gives you a little more of a visualization for it. You know, back then you needed a lot more help with your imagination with the limitations, as you said. And I had never even heard of Alleyway, but looking here, it came out the same month I was born
So yeah, yeah, it just goes to
here in
show.
North America.
Yeah, it just goes to show that we're pushing on, Nukes. We are for sure pushing on. Yeah, these types of games are super fun. I love that feeling of when you knock the ball to the top and it starts doing all of the work for you for a good solid like 10 seconds or whatever it is, and you just feel like an absolute baller. You just feel like the best gamer in the world. Awesome.
Yeah, I was just playing one of those last night actually because I
No
was
way.
bored. I was like, let me get one of those brick breaking games. I've got nothing else going on for a little bit.
Nice. Hell yeah. Nice, nice. All right, let's move on to your first one.
All right. Well, my first one is, of course, a game very near and dear to me. If you know me at all or have listened to this podcast, it's the North American cover of Resident Evil Remake.
Awesome. Awesome. I have something prepared for this as well.
It's it's very different from the original RE1. Has its cover is in North America anyway. I'm not sure about anywhere else. It's Chris Redfield with he's got like this face. He looks like an action hero, and it's still that is very effective too for what that game is. But this one shows more about like the remake itself. Like it's a lot more uh dark and dreary and serious, and um if you're just listening, it's got it's a scene from where the first zombie you encounter, and it's Jill lean back and the zombie about to lean in for a bite in a hallway just illuminated by the lightning outside, and it just captures the essence of Remake completely. The muted colors, the look of Jill's face, the drabness of it, it just really highlights the solitude of the game. You know, it's I don't know, it's just iconic to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the color scheme for sure, that drab brown, is
Hmm.
Resident Evil 1 Remake is dripping with that. And I also get this sense of just looking at this, because I have a different Resident Evil 1 Remake cover in my mind all the time, right? Because I grew up with a different one in Europe. Um,
Hmm.
but looking at this one, like, one thing that just hit me now was just that sense of claustrophobia. Like, I feel claustrophobic looking at this picture, or looking at
Hmm.
this art, which once again is another one of those are motifs throughout Resident Evil 1 Remake. So, like you kind of alluded to or mentioned there, this absolutely 100% nails the atmosphere and nails the gaming experience of Ori Remake for sure.
Yeah, and even like the little details they've put in this, like you can see the details on the wallpaper and the carpet when the lightning with the lightning on it. It's just they took a lot of care to capture just the scene that you're gonna see a lot in the game. You getting bit by the zombie. Uh, I don't know. I just love it. I don't know if I have anything deeper than that, but
No, awesome. And I just, like, as a little additional bonus here, I've pulled up the Resident Evil Remake cover that we got in Europe, and maybe in other parts of the world as well. I'm not entirely sure. This is the box art that I'm familiar with. Completely different approach here. I mean, me as a 12 or 13-year-old, or 14, however I was at the time, probably could have created something similar. I'm just putting it out there, very, very basic. It's cool,
uh,
but I mean,
it
it's
gives
not.
me like
Uh,
it's a lot simpler than the North American version, but it does still sort of it's like it's in blood.
yeah, for sure. And that kind of white and red mixture is something I do want to talk about. Um, with a different cover art
Hmm.
that I'll talk about in a couple of moments. But yeah, I don't know. I love the NA one. I'm not very fond of this at all. I'm really not. I don't know. Strange. My mind was blown when I saw the NA version. I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? There's a different, a completely different
It,
version that looks like
it kind
sick.
of it makes me wonder what like the Japanese version is.
That's a good question. It's a good question. Check it out after. Sweet. All right. I'm gonna move on to my next one, and keeping in theme here with zombies, I've got a version of zombies at my neighbors, right?
Shit.
Yeah, look at this thing. Look at this thing, right? In Europe or in Ireland, sometimes I'll use the two interchangeably, so I don't know if what I got in Ireland was blanket a statement across Europe as well. I'm just putting that disclaimer out there. But in Ireland, this game was actually just called Zombies, and it had a much different cover. The cover is the two main characters that you can play as, the guy or the girl, jumping on a trampoline, kind of surrounded by some of the enemies that are in the game. Um, Not very cool. It's a very dull looking picture. The main characters are like unfazed by the monsters, and the monsters themselves like aren't even threatening looking. It was always a very kind of like confusing image for me when I ever looked at it as a kid growing up playing the game. I was like, oh, you're supposed to be like freaked out by this stuff in Zombies at My Neighbors. You're not supposed to be like
Mhm.
jumping on a trampoline and having the time of your life. So I always found that to be strange and weird. And then the US version isn't too far behind that on the stinker scale either, because it's literally just like depicted photos of like a real woman looking scared, while there's like humanoid zombies in the background, all depicted by real people. And it's just, once again, like another dull depiction and not
Mm-hmm.
very, very exciting. And then I've, come across this one online, and a lot of people like watching this might be like, I've never, ever, ever seen this before. There's a lot of urban myths and legends that come with this box art. Um, Apparently, only 1,000 of them were ever made, and it might have something to do with it being like a Mexico only re-release. But the facts, they're not facts. That's just some commonly agreed upon agreed upon in pieces of information that I found on the internet. But who knows? For the folks listening, just to give you kind of like a description of what we're seeing here, um, it's an action shot that looks like it was pulled right out of a comic book, and it depicts the main male character jumping and or kicking a zombie, all while shooting him with that water gun weapon. And in the background, you've got a werewolf and a monster that is very reminiscent of that creature. What's the name of the movie called?
Creature from
That's the one. Yeah, yeah. Creature
Black
from the
Lagoon.
Black Lagoon. That's the one. That's the one. And I love it because this artistic style is very reminiscent of, like, those old horror movie posters. I think from like the
Mm-hmm.
30s through to the 50s. Um, but there's also a hint of 90s in here too, via the depiction of the action shot of the main character and the opposing zombie. And
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. It's a whole bunch of different things that Wheezy loves, all just put into one piece of artwork. Um, but yeah, like I'd mentioned, not a whole lot is known about this. There's those couple of facts that I mentioned, but another kind of piece of speculation that you have to take with the hugest pinch of salt is that apparently many people have noticed that the character depicted is very similar to that of the lead vocalist of The Offspring, Dexter Holland. And people are speculating that the devs did this intentionally as they wanted The Offspring to do the soundtrack for the game, but obviously that never happened. Now, I don't know. That seems to be a very, very wild and far fetched.
Yeah, and this cover really captures the game even better than like the North American one's pretty boring. I mean, it looks like an old movie poster, but it doesn't capture the essence of the game like this one does.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. This is sick. Yeah, I love absolutely everything about this. If I could get my hands on a copy, I would love to. Apparently, a lot of them aren't in good condition, the ones that have been found, and I think they go for like thousands of dollars as well. So that's not in my future in any time soon. But yeah, awesome. Let's move on to your next one.
All right, my next one is Ghost of Tsushima. Tsushima? Tsushima. However you say it. I love this game, but I really love the cover of it. It it depicts the oh it depicts the main character you play as in this field. It's all stark white. There's clouds rolling in from the back. Um, and the only spattering of color is these red maple leaves, I think it is, and it takes place in Japan in the past when the Mongols attacked the island of Tsushima, and you kind of get that with you don't get that exact thing, but you get like that. There's a storm brewing. You can see with
Mm-hmm.
the dark clouds covering and the wind itself guides you in the game, and it's blowing behind him. I don't know what that symbolizes, why it's going, but I was like, maybe the answer's behind you. Maybe it's a little too deep of a dive. But, and I got like blood or fire from the spatterings of red with the leaves, and I don't know, it's a great cover. I don't. Once again, I don't have like loads on it, but it's it's just beautiful. I love looking at it.
Simple. It's very simplistic. There's only a few different colors that are being used, all of which complement bounce off each other super
Mhm.
well. And I haven't played the game, so I can't comment on any of the particulars or any of the details
Mhm.
that might be at play within here. But as somebody who hasn't played the game, this definitely captures my attention and kind of piques my interest a little bit. I'm like, oh, maybe I should
It
look at this.
it's a beautiful game. It's it's just the everywhere you go is beautiful. You got yellow leaves falling in some places, and it looks just like this rain of gold on you. And it's I don't know. It's a beautiful game, and it's also dark and ugly in spots because of they're under invasion.
Mm.
And I guess there's some symbolism with him holding his samurai mask, and it looks kind of Shakespearean a little,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
like he's like maybe he's having to choose between his honor and giving that up to become the ghost to do like there. It's a honor comes into play a lot in the game because he starts using like unhonorable ways to kill the Mongols,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the characters comment on it. But you have to choose. You choose as you go, like to do it more honorably, or the way that a samurai would, or to do whatever it takes to save your people.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, Shakespearean was a very good way of describing how he's like looking at the skull kind of almost in a very reflective manner. Um
Hmm.
yeah, it's awesome. Sweet. I'm going to move on to my next one. My next one might surprise you a little bit. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, these aren't my favorite games, and I've been very vocal that I'm not the biggest fan of the original Resident Evil 4, and I'll take whatever level of level of abuse
Here it comes. Here it
that
comes.
comes with that. Just I love the remake. Don't get me wrong, like the remake is a 10 out of 10 game, but I'm not very fond of the original, and we can just park that opinion there, and y'all can do whatever you want with it. But I will say that this cover art though is probably one of my favorites. This is absolutely incredible, and that's why I left it to last. For the folks listening, once again, this is from what I believe is the PAL version, and might
Hmm.
have. I'm not quite sure on the regions that it was released, because when I was trying to get some definitive information on that, there was some folks online saying that they did see this version in NA. Now it might have been some sort of like very limited release. So I don't know where or what versions it was linked to, if it was just the PAL or what have you. But regardless, there's no denying that this is incredible. It has a creepy red sky and backdrop, and in the foreground there's a dark forest with the menacing Dr. Salvador, or Chainsaw Man, as standing there with his chainsaw. The logo is primarily in white font with a red outline and with some red broken cracks in the lettering, but it really pops against the black background of the forest. Um, I love it because it's just like a picture perfect definition of ominous. Dr. Salvador
Hmm.
just standing there, like waiting. Just it invokes this fear in me. Like he's like he's holding a chainsaw and he's not in an action stance. He's almost relaxed, which in of itself conveys that he's unfazed in circumstances where he'll need to swing that thing around, like which is like really the stuff of nightmares. Um, and it also reminds me of just this picture reminds me of the classic line, "Enter the survival horror." It looks like he's
Hmm.
he's blocking the way to your entry into the survival horror world and all of the monsters that you'll encounter. And it kind of makes you think, well, if I gotta go up against this guy right now, I dread to think of what else I'm going to experience along the way. Um, The font, I had mentioned I didn't want to talk about like white, the use of white and red. There's always something so sinister about seeing the purity of white font become corrupted by the color red. And I don't need to like dive into the symbolic meaning there, as it pretty much explains itself. But overall, this cover is incredibly fear-inducing, and I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, this is kind of the opposite case with like the remake when we did remake one, because it's a little simpler than the North American version, but it's more effective and it's just better because the North American version is like Leon, he's just holding the gun and the chainsaw guy's behind him, and it's like he's in the middle of the village, in the beginning when it
Mm-hmm.
it all pops off. It's an all right cover, but this is much more effective to me. There's a lot more going on in the North American version, but it it's not as effective as this.
No, for sure, I agree. And that's it from me. Do you want to do your last one?
Yeah, let's get on that one.
Oh hell yeah! I had not seen this one until you shared it with me. This one is sick.
This my last one is from Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is like the remastered trilogy all together in like one thing. Come out a couple years ago, but it captures the trilogy perfectly. It's got all the characters that are so important to Mass Effect, uh, that surrounds Shepard's helmet, and they chose a helmeted Shepard, so because people who play Mass Effect, if they pick the male or female, you tend to think of Shepard as yours, the one you made. So that's a way that no matter who you made, that's still your Shepard,
Oh,
you
okay.
know. And then like in the lower right corner, well, maybe it's lower left corner. I'm sorry. As you can see, the Citadel, which is like the capital of the galaxy and
Mm-hmm.
very important to the story. I don't know if you ever played Mass Effect.
No, I haven't. Very a lot of
It's
talking
very,
in that game.
yeah.
A lot of yapping.
It's very important to the story. It's the capital. A lot of stuff goes on there, and then this you see like half of it's blue at the top, and the other half's red. In the game, your moral choices are signified. Like Paragon is blue, and Renegade is red.
Oh, okay, okay.
And on the blue side, I assume that's Earth. It's hard to tell. It's all peaceful, fine, nothing's going on. And on the red side, it's it's the main enemies of the game
Hmm.
are beginning their assault. That's more along in Mass Effect 3, but they had a special version of this, which I'm not surely exactly how it worked, but you could go on and create your own sort of uh, cover for the game where you could choose. You see how the characters are lined up. You could choose what order they were in and who was bigger than or whatever. I guess according to however more important they were to you personally.
Really? So you could go online and use
I don't
like
know if it was so much that you could like replace your own, but they let you go and completely make your own cover. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. So
no, no,
so
no, no. Sorry, I did. I should have just let you talk. We would have gotten to the bottom of that a lot quicker if I hadn't interrupted. Yeah, a couple of not a couple. There was all of these covers are absolute bangers. They're so cool. Even looking at this Mass Effect one now, I know for a fact, Nukes. I've tried to play like Mass Effect, and I was like, "Oh, yap, it's yap central here. I can't do this." Like, um, but even looking at this now, I'm kind of like, "Oh, maybe I should give it another shot." Even though the gamer that I am in me knows that it's not gonna work out. I'd nearly spend all the money on the game anyway, just because this cover looks so cool, and it's the same with all of the rest of them. They're awesome. Folks, listen. What's your favorite cover art? What's your favorite box art? However you wanna call it. Please leave us a comment. Let us know. I'd love to hear it. Before we finish up, I would like to thank everybody for listening to this episode and our previous 10 episodes. We do appreciate it. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify. So feel free to follow us and give us a like on those platforms. We are also on YouTube as well. So once again, feel free to give us a sub and a comment and a like. Anything that will push us into the algorithms, as I like to say. And we will catch you all in the next one.
See y'all.